All right, so good afternoon or evening to everyone. And today we have our last Tuesday afterwork session of this year or this summer period. And today's session will be focused on the topic of AI and machine learning. And just a few practicalities before we start. Please make sure that you have muted your microphone so that we don't get any weird background noises. And also to make sure that we have a smooth connection, please do disable your camera. And if you have any questions or comments throughout the session, feel free to write them in the chat, or you can also request the microphone so that we can allow you to ask these questions directly. And as I was saying, this is our last session of this series. We began a month ago, about a month or so. And we had interesting talks by both external speakers and our alumni members covering different topics. And I'm very happy to have today with us two speakers that you can see here. And both talks will cover the topic of AI and machine learning, but from different angles. So the first talk will look more at the broader social implications, social and legal implications of these AI technologies. And then later on in the session, we will look more at the technical aspects, more practical implementations of AI and machine learning. And without further ado, I would like to welcome to the stage or floor our first speaker, Cezara Panait. And she's going to discuss and talk about the human rights in the AI regulatory framework. And well, her background and her experiences on legal aspects. And she's currently the head of digital policy at Europol's, and where she's coordinating the research and the policy activities on different digital affairs, including these subjects of automation, AI, and online platforms. And she has a background in the legal field, and has participated as guest speaker and moderator in different conferences and debates related to emerging technologies and impact in the society and in the economy. She has also published different press articles and policy briefs on all these topics, and has won also awards on policy proposals on AI, ethics, content regulation, and so on. But perhaps I should be not talking so much and let Cezara introduce herself as well as the topic of this Tuesday after work talk. So once again, Cezara, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for the very nice introduction. I'm very glad to be here and to talk with you all. I'm just going to share my presentation now. Thank you so much for the introductory speech. I will talk about a few aspects that I've tackled in my current and ongoing research, and also for my studies, but in my professional work too. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you can interrupt me with no problems, but then we can also discuss at the end of the presentation. So thanks a lot. I'll just start with a few words about the agenda. We will talk about what is AI and some examples of its uses, the regulatory framework for artificial intelligence, a few rights that are possibly impacted by artificial intelligence, especially non-discrimination, freedom of expression, and access to information altogether, and right to privacy and data protection. Also, I will tackle the issues with regard to the EU and also the US approach to artificial intelligence, and how private companies are safeguarding human rights, but also some words on AI ethics and other policy recommendations in general. Artificial intelligence is, in my understanding, is a system's ability to correctly interpret external data, to learn from that data, and to use the learnings to achieve specific goals and tasks through flexible adaptation. We need data, training data, to make the algorithms understand how to apply the concepts to lead and produce results. and includes both input data and expected output data. The algorithm, which works by combining large amounts of data with fast and intelligent algorithms, allowing the software to learn automatically from the patterns, and the decision-making result, in which the AI system learns to make better predictions using vast amounts of historical data. And in my research, I focused on the accuracy of the predictions depending on data, training the algorithmic model, and how we can ensure that this outputs of the algorithms, the decision-making is not contradicting with the human rights principle that we want to safeguard. So this is to be more visual representation of what I have just explained about the algorithms. We should make this distinction between not all algorithms are using artificial intelligence. So it's quite a different, it could be the algorithmic decision-making, but also artificial intelligence-based decision-making. I usually say that AI is already part of our daily lives, and we can see that most probably in our social media interaction, in how we can see our content displayed in our feeds. For example, how we see news or posts, articles or suggestions for how to make new friends on social media platforms, but also in other areas, for example, in assessing credits worthiness for individuals, or in the employment sector. AI is really often used. Also, it's used in the criminal justice system to make predictions about the risk of reoffending of specific defendants. This is particularly to US. But also it could provide information to police forces and tell them where they should patrol. That's again mostly happening in the US. And we saw recently that with the pandemic, AI algorithms were used for advanced diagnosis and treatment, but also for fighting and predicting epidemics, especially with regard to coronavirus. There were many initiatives trying to use the potential of AI to tackle the pandemic, but also we can see AI used in self-driving cars or autonomous weapons. So it's basically, it can be used for both positive or malicious purposes as well. It just depends about the concrete use of AI. With regard to the state of the regulatory framework, we can see many actors involved in this process. For example, EU has just published the EU AI Act, the first regulatory proposal on establishing rules, legally binding rules framework for artificial intelligence. It's now being subject to negotiations in the process, in the decision-making process at EU level, but also US is proposing rules on AI, and other state actors like China, or we have national strategies developed with regard to artificial intelligence. But there are also many organizations, international organizations or international bodies that are concerned with the legal framework for artificial intelligence. For example, UNESCO is working on establishing the first worldwide framework on AI ethics, and is going to be concluded soon. For example, in April, they had the first interdepartmental meeting, and they will have soon in June the second one. So they will issue probably this autumn their proposal on AI ethics. OECD is also a front runner in this regard, with the OECD Policy Observatory gathering a lot of data on artificial intelligence uses. And also they have published the G20 Principles on Artificial Intelligence. It's a landmark document that you may find very interesting with regard to AI principles. And at the same time, Council of Europe is working on establishing a framework, a legal framework for artificial intelligence that is based on the three principles that are the cornerstones of Council of Europe: rule of law, democracy, and fundamental rights. And another organization would be OSCE, with a representative of media freedom. They have a lot of interest in how artificial intelligence has an impact on freedom of expression, but also NATO is now concerned with the military and security dimension of artificial intelligence policies, and they want to have clear rules for AI and security as well. And with regard to human rights law, we already have a binding mechanism for artificial intelligence, not just for artificial intelligence per se, but this legal framework already applies to these systems, algorithmic systems, to the new developments, including artificial intelligence, although they are not clearly mentioned in those acts that were established, issued many years ago. But we have now principal area of regulation. We have the international human rights law with the UDHR, Universal Declaration for Human Rights, the ICCPR, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, but also regional framework going a bit another level. We have, for example, EU law, specific directives, for example, on discrimination, non-discrimination issues. We have aspects that are applicable to artificial intelligence systems, but also on data protection law. For example, GDPR in its article 21st has a lot of, has some remarks that are applicable to algorithmic systems, so AI. And with regard to national strategies, like I mentioned before, there is, I think it's important to understand that states are already developing their perspectives on artificial intelligence and how it should be regulated in accordance with the other frameworks, for example, EU AI Act. And we have this difference between hard law, which is legally binding and is non-negotiable, and the soft law, for example, we have commitments that are not, they don't have the same degree, the same power, for example, as hard law. We have codes of conduct, and we might have in the future more documents that relate more to AI ethics, or they're just principles, so not the same level of legal force. We can see this is a visual representation on how AI policies are being developed. The actors, for example, international organizations, private sector, and national authorities, and the main countries that are active in this area of regulation. This is from Council of Europe, this visual. So it's being constantly updated on the website. And I think it's very interesting to see also the perspective. For example, here is the civil society, the green bubble. Here is multi-stakeholder approach. For example, we have PAI, Partnership on AI. That's exactly this kind of multi-stakeholder approach, gathering together the academia and the big technological companies, state actors, and also other parties that are interested in that. So it's interesting to see how it developed during the years as well. This is a representation from 2020, but is still valid, from OECD AI Policy Observatory. With regard to AI research, we see that US is leading the way, followed by China and then the EU. And there was a research from Data Innovation Center that said that probably China will be the first one in the next few years with regard to AI research, because they are investing a lot of money into research. So it will be interesting to see how it will evolve during the next years. Here are the most important AI stakeholders. Governments, private sector, because they are also issuing some, so to say, they have these private commitments, self-voluntarily agreed that they can be supposed to. And also we have interested parties like civil society and academia, and I think we should all work together to develop these principles and policies on artificial intelligence. With regard to non-discrimination, this has been most of the time the issue, the right that was most affected by artificial intelligence, because AI can result discriminatory, and it can reinforce or maximize societal historical biases, because the AI algorithms are normally perceived to be black boxed, and because they cannot be properly tested before they are put into practice, they can have these tendencies to discriminate some categories of people, and also because the data sets might include previous biases in their training, and they can reproduce these societal discriminatory predispositions. And in the criminal justice sector, we can see that the courts use AI systems to assess the likelihood of recidivism of those who are the defenders, so to say. And it happens mostly in the US because this is where the software is used. In the employment sector, we see that recruiters are increasingly using AI to determine if a candidate is suitable for a certain job. And as well, on credit assessment, banks use AI systems to determine which applicants should receive the credits. This is decision-making tree model. So I'm a lawyer, not a technical person, but I can show you at least a few things about how this algorithm works on, for example, defining the criteria based on which the decision is being made. For example, on prior arrest, on race and age, they can take a decision to convict the defendant to have a higher sentence or a lower one just on these issues. And we can see that this is Compass, the system is the name, Compass, and they are determining that if the people should have low risk or high risk. And it's historically it's being said that people of color are ranked higher than white people. So the bias in algorithm is proved already. So this is one thing that should be tackled in the future and corrected. And another example is related to Facebook. So the researchers had this advertiser on Facebook and try to do some to advertise for specific jobs. So they had a delivery job, one for pizza delivery and one for grocery delivery. There were currently more men than women who drive for Domino's, and vice versa for Instacart. So here we can see that there is a tendency of the algorithm to advertise also the product more to some persons, male users or female users, depending on how the algorithms created the stereotypes. So also the same pattern was identified for software engineering jobs. There were skewed male and Netflix skewed females, and also for selling cars, mostly advertised to males, and for jewelry to females. So we can see that already there are some issues that can lead to the idea that there are a lot of stereotypes that the algorithms are replicating. With regard to freedom of expression and access to information, there are a lot of concerns, especially with this effect of social media, which is amplifying probably many of the thoughts of people, and their access to information is being controlled by the algorithms who are able to select what kind of information you're going to get on your newsfeed. So there might be limitations or violations or freedom of expression, censoring lawful content due to automated filtering mechanisms, because they have this incapacity to distinguish if that was legal content, if that was a parody, copyright exception, or these borderlines between lawful or illegal content. And especially the contextual, so if you have some particularities in one country, it might be, maybe the reviewer will not understand them, so neither will do an algorithm. And the right to receive and impart information can also be infringed by the algorithm's mechanism. We select which content we should see, for example, on Facebook newsfeed. The UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression emphasized in 2018, it was David Kay who mentioned a few issues with regard to content display and personalization, because now platforms are dominated by platforms decide how individuals access and share information and how news is disseminated, and also content moderation and removal. We see that artificial intelligence is being used in moderating content, including spam detection or hash matching or other kind of identifying illegal content online. And on profiling, advertising, and targeting, we can see that private and public actors have this, there is an increase of use of targeted advertisement, and consumers can be influenced, and their freedom of opinion online can be also impacted seriously. So I think there are some challenges here. For example, how to strike this balance on content regulation and removing illegal content online without censoring content or not infringing freedom of expression or access to information. Tackling this or misinformation with artificial intelligence would be very difficult, especially when artificial intelligence is being used in deepfakes to create disinformation purposefully. And the intermediaries' liability, for example, how we decide the accountability, responsibility, but also transparency and compliance with international human rights law will be a challenge in the next few years about how AI is being used on online platforms. There are some examples here on previous moments when artificial intelligence filters failed. And for example, they removed tens of thousands of videos documenting atrocities in Syria just because they flagged them as terrorist content, but they were contrarily the opposite. Or this lecturer of the Harvard Law School professor was taken down because of copyright infringement because they had short extracts of pop songs. So we see that everything can be, well, the filters have this tendency of taking down content more often than they should. And with regard to the right to privacy in artificial intelligence, basically online platforms use big data and these algorithms to understand how to use the data of the users and how to explore ways of directing content to the users in which they will be more engaged with that content, because you are supposed to engage with that post, to like it, to share it, or to spend the time reading that article. So we see that there were many data breaches when technological companies have access to that data. We see how Cambridge Analytica, what happened some years ago, and especially with the presidential elections in the US, also because they have this potential of manipulating voting behavior, but also political opinions and freedom of opinion and thought. So because we live in an interconnected society, every step we take online leaves digital footprints. So our data is the most valuable asset that we have, where every app that we use requires access to our data. So we cannot just opt out from that. But we would need not necessarily more data, but more quality data to achieve better results with artificial intelligence. And because platforms, big technology platforms like Facebook and Google use these surveillance-based business models to harvesting data to deliver targeted advertising to maximize user engagement, I think we should be mindful of our online behavior and to try to be not as strict as possible, but just to understand that everything we do is tracked online. And I will move a little bit faster here. But this is the first mentioned thing that was encompassed in the ethics guidelines on trustworthy AI, encompassing these three elements: legal, ethical, and robust AI, with human agency, oversight, technical robustness and safety, privacy and data governance, transparency, diversity, non-discrimination, and fairness, but also societal and environmental well-being and accountability. And now there is the EU's approach to AI in the white paper, and I haven't included here the new proposal on AI Act, but it's also this risk-based sector approach on regulating AI based on, for example, high-risk AI, low-risk AI, and how will impact the society at large. So that will be, they will have different specific obligations and transparency rules for the systems, depending on the risk they involve for the society. And just a few words on the US, United States approach on artificial intelligence. There are a lot of developments with the national strategy, with another executive order on advancing racial equity and support for this was aimed to help reducing bias in AI, but also the Algorithmic Accountability Act, which hasn't passed in the Congress yet, but that would be a very important landmark document in the US as well to reduce bias and the discrimination in artificial intelligence. So I think US is more focused on competitiveness and economic growth, and EU is imposing harder rules on human rights. And the sector approach is also making big steps because the big tech companies are, they have adopted voluntary commitments on safeguarding human rights, especially with regard to AI, but these documents lack enforceability or oversight. One very important document is the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, which aims to, this involves a corporate responsibility to protect human rights and to address these adverse effects through prevention, mitigation, and remediation, also conducting human rights impact assessments. And it's a highly authoritative soft law instrument. These are the main documents that were issued on ethical artificial intelligence that from 2016 up to, this was, for example, we can see that Toronto Declaration, Universal Guidelines for AI, Human Rights in the Age of AI, but also here the Guiding Principles, Trustworthy, Trusted AI. And here that OECD, G20 principles, that would be illustrative map of how the AI ethical approach was developed. But of course, everyone loves AI. Dealing with ethical guidelines is something else, but taking responsibility for the decisions of the algorithms is much more complicated. So some recommendations would include evaluating and updating current enforcement mechanisms with regard to human rights compliance in public and private deployment of AI, creating independent centers of expertise at national level to monitor human rights and artificial intelligence, and assessing, conducting research, reporting, and providing advice to government and industry in coordination with regulators, civil society, academia, and human rights, and societal implications of the use of algorithms, automated decision-making systems, or artificial intelligence. I think that would be all from my side. Thanks so much for your time and attention, and I'm happy to answer to your questions if you have something to ask me. I will stop the presentation now.
Thank you very much, Cezara, for the interesting presentation. I think that was quite a broad and good comprehensive overview of the current status of AI regulation and guidelines in different places. So to recap a bit what you mentioned, that AI has become quite pervasive with many applications in our daily lives, and there are multiple actors involved at state and international level that are somehow shaping this regulatory framework. And we also saw that in terms of the actual implementation or work in AI, the main countries are US, China, and then, well, the EU member states. And you also mentioned two primary issues. First, this sort of black box in which we don't know what the AI is doing. And the second one is the biases when the data models are trained. And you also gave some examples on that. We also saw that AI has now the capacity to decide what information the users can see or not, and that it might also invade the privacy of some users due to this big data processing. And finally, we saw different approaches that have been proposed with guidelines on ethical AI. And we also had the opportunity to compare a bit what's the EU's approach, which is a bit stricter in terms of respecting the rights and the laws, and the US approach, which is focused on economic growth. So I would like to open the floor for any questions. So if you have any questions for Cezara, please feel free to write them in the chat. And we have already one question from Paul, who's asking,
yeah, I can maybe ask it.
Yeah,
myself.
Sure, go ahead. Maybe it's better if you ask yourself the question. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the past, that we see now in the Netherlands that there are many laws being passed to ensure, like, say, that citizens get treated correctly. And for example, one of the criteria was to, for example, remove ethnicity judging, like is currently actually happening, especially during airport controls. And I was a bit wondering if you are going to remove certain criteria from even AI modules, or also in general, like, for example, not grading on ethnicity anymore. How can you still ensure the protection of the citizens? Because what in this case has to happen is that the police needs to give a more thorough reason, for example, of why did we remove this video, or why did we pick you out of the queue in the airport? And this makes that the companies really have to reveal their core algorithm, which is not necessarily wanted when protecting citizens, for example. So yeah, how do you look against this?
So it's that kind of question on how to strike the balance between the rights of the users and the rights of the citizens, and also more like state security and also enforcement of yeah. So I think this issue is it's so debated, and especially mostly I think it's in the US, with they have national security as an argument for everything they say when they want to get access to surveillance cameras or other type of videos. But at the same side, at the same time, we have we need to ensure that the rights of the citizens are protected. So I think states should be mindful of having all these they have to see the right balance between how to ensure that they can enforce the legal provisions, but also they don't overdo things. So I think it would be up to the states to decide how they implement national policies, especially with national security. That would be an argument for every state to impose stricter rules on some things. So I think, yeah, it's a challenging task to see how it will work out in the future. But I think at least with the EU's vision to artificial intelligence, we will have a horizontal approach that would be applied to the member states as well. And the EU will decide, for example, how all the EU member states will consider the high risk AI and also the other systems that are not so harmful to the citizens. So maybe that would be a more uniform approach to overlapping that. But otherwise, I think that would be an open question. So
the EU will try to get a general recommendation of what countries should do to ensure that the AI is correctly applied, let's say?
At least that. I mean, they are trying very hard, and I know that they're trying to implement new models and measures. For example, these regulatory sandboxes to be a framework where you can test how the algorithm will develop in the future and if they will have negative implications on the society. That would be a space where you can test these AI algorithms to ensure that it will not infringe citizens' rights. But yeah, EU will lead the way and will decide how the regulatory approach should be conducted further on, and the member states will obey that. Okay. But thanks so much for your question.
Thank you, Paul and Cezara for the answer. We have another question from Julia, but I don't know, Julia, if you prefer to ask yourself the question or should I read it from the chat?
I will ask it, thanks. So I was wondering that, so first of all, it was a really great talk and thank you. And it's also in general a great topic. But I feel that there is a lot of focus now on making artificial intelligence or regulating artificial intelligence and the rights and the ethics of it. But at the same time, I think even before that, so if we just ignore all the artificial intelligence or machine learning powered software, there is already a lot of software tools in place that help make decisions. These can be faulty. This can be kind of sometimes even considered as a black box to people who are not developers. And in general, like decisions have been made since humanity is around. So are we good in regulating these aspects? And then now we have to focus on the AI, or is it something that goes parallel, hand in hand, more or less? And we are detecting maybe even other issues that we haven't seen before?
Well, Julia, thanks so much for your question. I think it's a really great question. And I wondered and I asked myself the same thing when I was researching on that. And I tried to understand, for example, the discrimination which is reinforced by artificial intelligence. And someone else asked me, but how we solve discrimination in the real world without artificial intelligence? And then I understood that there are still things that we can see that these issues haven't been solved outside of this technological world. But then I think with the artificial intelligence, with the technological advancement, now we can at least try to understand better. We can see how this discrimination is being addressed in the society. We can try to combat that. For example, if you were discriminated by your boss at your job just because he didn't like you, you wouldn't be able to combat that because you couldn't say that he discriminated you on purpose. But if an AI algorithm discriminates you, you are able to contradict this decision, or at least to try to understand on which basis the algorithm discriminated you, and you can try to repair that damage. So I think there are some things that we can still, because we have this opportunity of understanding better what's happening and why the algorithm takes this decision, or at least we're getting there. I think we aim to fix these life inequalities that already happen, and we don't have another choice or solution to combat them, at least. So I think, yeah, it's very valid what you said. So I think they should go hand in hand, like you said already.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And in this case, like, because in the one of your last slides, there was the comics, and no one wants to take responsibility for the decisions of the AI. But like, what happens if there is, I don't know, some traditional software, like who takes the responsibility if the decisions based on this software or the actual actions of this software are causing any harm to people? Like, is it usually the company who developed it, or the one who ordered it, or is it something shared?
Well, it normally depends on a case-by-case basis. You should see if the model that the company developed is biased in itself, or how the company applied it to the persons that they included data from in their algorithm, what led to the actual discrimination. So it's an evaluation that you should do on a case-by-case basis. But I don't exclude the fact that they might be a shared responsibility of also the company, the developers, but there haven't been many cases in which someone is actually held accountable for the biases or for the actual damage that was produced.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia, for the question, and Cezara for the answer. Maybe just as a follow-up, because I think this is a very interesting topic, that what is different now? I mean, we're talking about issues of discrimination, privacy, problems that we have been dealing up with since a long time ago. What is different in this case? Why there is a need for a EU-wide framework when we're talking about AI? Is it because it's something new that we don't fully understand? What makes it different from existing software, or all these situations that are already happening to us, or have been happening to us?
I think there is a predominance of artificial intelligence algorithms in all our activities, in our actions online. So regulators already saw that, and they try to find some solutions, but because with the technological advancement, there are new challenges for the users, for the society at large. So already there are some types of discrimination or human rights infringements, which were already happening before the use of AI, which is such an increasement in the last years. I think it's not. I mean, it's really useful to address these issues, the challenges, because AI has a huge potential in improving productivity, the efficiency of work, also to find new solutions, probably in tackling the pandemic, and also leading to economic recovery after that. So we need to use all the opportunities that artificial intelligence and new technologies pose. But also we should be mindful of some negative consequences that might happen. And for that, we need to be prepared and to have a regulatory framework that is able to find these challenges and to at least prevent them. Because what is the EU approach is also focused on preventing these cases of AI infringements to happen. So not so much on trying to address the infringements already when they happen, but more on ex ante obligations that will be imposed to companies before they even infringe an obligation. So I think that would be interesting, because it's another perspective on how to tackle such a new technology.
Right, makes sense. So that we can exploit the potential of these technologies, but also ensure that we prevent any of these bad things from happening. Now, because of time reasons, I would perhaps give the chance to 2 more questions. And I think Sritam wanted to ask something since some time ago, so please go ahead.
Yeah, hi Cezara, thanks. Hi. Really nice presentation. So my question is regarding your slide in which you explained like right to privacy and AI. And nowadays, a lot of data from the sensor devices like thermostats or other kinds of digital sensors are going to the cloud. So are there also any GDPR restrictions for that? Just like our data, which Facebook or Instagram has. So like that sensors data, they also have some privacy restrictions, whether it can be stored and how long, and can decisions be made. For example, if they have the temperature sensor data of my room for last 1 year, they can really understand what kind of behavior my room has. And so, yeah, so my question was regarding that.
Yeah, so with sensitive data, but also other kind of data, GDPR and the AI regulation will apply at the same time. So they will be applying together to prevent human rights infringements and right to privacy infringements. So I think it's another cornerstone after GDPR. The AI Act will be another landmark document issued by European Union that will address such challenges. So I think that because they will be applied in this kind of complementarity, I think it would be very useful for the users.
Yeah, and it shall be different across geographies. Like China might have their own, US might have their own, and
yes,
okay,
that will happen because they don't agree on the same perspective and approach on regulating AI. Not at all.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Sritam.
All right. So now two last questions. I would this time just read it myself. If the people who ask them don't mind, I will rephrase a bit Amit's question, and he's asking a bit more of information about how does how are the legal cases treated? How does the framework work? Let's say, for example, that there is some sort of violation to human rights due to AI in the EU. How would this be addressed at European level, at the country level, and what legislation comes into play?
Yeah, so it's a novelty. So there is not a lot of case law in this regard. So because also it's quite difficult to prove that discrimination was that happened because of the algorithms. So the cases, the legal cases, at least what I have researched, because I tried as well to find this legal cases that especially mention these infringements of that were related to artificial intelligence. So I think the case law, the jurisprudence is not so well developed yet. I think this is in the making. So the next years will tell how the states approach that, if they use, but I think at least they will use EU law. For example, EU directives on discrimination, they will use GDPR because that would be an efficient tool to understand, especially Article 21 on GDPR, and then resort to maybe national legislation. But I think they will start with EU law because it's more general and it has an approach that can be used for more member states, at least at EU level. That would be my take.
Thank you. Yeah, and we also got a comment from Carolina. I know she has been also researching about this topic, that she thinks, or she has seen some information that the EU is planning on publishing a legal framework sometime in autumn or in next year that will answer some of these questions. She also asks a question about the civil engagement. So how do you see the participation and the engagement of normal civil actors in all these topics that we have been covering throughout your presentation and your Q&A?
Okay, so with regard to the legal framework at EU level, EU just published on 21st of April the AI Act, and it will last about 1.5 years to have the concrete proposal, and that they will of course continue negotiations this fall and for the next 18 months or so. But the main document has been proposed by the Commission and now is going through the ordinary legislative procedure in the EU Parliament and the Council. So we will have that once they agree. But I think it's a proposal that has a lot of at stake. So they will try to rush a bit. And with regard to the engagement of civil society, I can say that just because I'm working for a think tank and I'm representing the civil society and especially how it can work. There are working groups at national states level. There are working groups at the UNESCO level. I've been invited to such working groups to represent the voice of the civil society, and I haven't expected that. I thought no one will take into consideration what we have to say, especially when you have the big technological companies and that they have a lot of influence. But being able to come with some proposals, to be at the same table with regulators and to try to make amendments or to try to make things a little bit better, you know, it's the motivation that you need to push things forward and to bring your contribution. So I think it's very important that we have this chance as a civil society, and it's getting better and better because they have public consultations and a lot of engagement with all the stakeholders. So I think we are on a good path. So I'm very happy about that. And thank you everyone for your questions. They were really great, really great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thanks also to you, Cezara, a lot. I think the public consultation on the EU legislation proposal is also now open. As we speak right now, it's open on the website of the European Commission for comments of the society. So everyone can go online and see what has been proposed and comment on it.
And they take into account all of this.
Let's hope so, and let's also hope to see how this develops and goes over the next years. I can think also on the lessons from GDPR that I think has been already out for 5 years, and it was great in principle, but now we have to also consider how is the implementation going so far, right? So this might also take a while with the case of AI. But again, thank you very much for the talk. We had so many questions and things to discuss, and perhaps in a future opportunity, we'll be glad to have you again with us in these alumni events. And well, now we have to move on also to our next presentation, which will dig a bit deeper into the technical aspects of AI and machine learning. And for that, we have one of our alumnus, Sritam Paltasingh, who's from Embedded Systems, and he has been living and working first in the Netherlands and then now in Berlin. And he's a senior staff engineering currently at MSA, the safety company. And he will explain us a bit more about this AI and machine learning at the edge and how this can be implemented. So Sritam, please go ahead, the floor is yours. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Yeah.
So that you can present your slides.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's great. Share screen. When I'm sharing the screen, it's coming host disabled participant screen sharing.
All right, give me 1 second. I think you might need to be a co-host of the session, so I will give you now the permissions.
Okay.
So now you should be able to share the screen.
Yeah, I'm able to. That's great. Thanks. So it's visible, right?
Yes.
Yes.
We see the a presenter's view, though, the editing view of the slides.
Okay, you're sharing, but yeah, but the slides, yeah, okay, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right?
Yeah, I think probably you need to swap the screen that you're sharing because now we see your presenter view, not the presentation itself.
One second. Let's get confused. Okay, so before that, let me introduce myself. Like, as I said, myself, Sritam Paltasingh, and I'm from the eastern part of India, from the city called Bhubaneswar. And I started my master's program in EIT in 2015 with my entry university at KTH in Stockholm. And my exit university was in Technical University Eindhoven. And I've been working in Berlin since 2018. It's a beautiful city out here. And I'm in the domain of embedded systems. So embedded systems is all about writing software for devices. such as like this. A device in front of me, it's basically the device of my workplace. And today we will deal with, I mean, no need to explain AI, artificial intelligence, everyone knows. But nowadays, in today's presentation, I will explain a new paradigm approach to AI, which is done, and how different it is, and why should we go for. And then we will conclude with a very interesting demonstration where I have so many wake words, 6 wake words, and we will see the presentation. We will see the demonstration. And now, okay, I share my screen, and over here, PowerPoint. Okay. Now, how is it going? 1 second, because I'm not much used to use Zoom.
Perfect. Now we see the
it's okay,
presentation slides.
No, it's okay. That's great. Happy to know. Okay, so basically, what is edge AI? So let me first of all explain to you what does edge mean. And so this is what basically the agenda of the contents is, in which we start with an edge. What is an edge? And then we go for what is AI at the edge. By the way, anytime anyone can stop me and directly ask. And what is AI at the edge? What is this new thing, which is a buzzword these days? A lot of things, many startups are working, many big companies are also working. What is AI at the edge? And then we'll see at some of the typical use cases, which is predominantly there. And then for that, and then we see how the development workflow is, what kind of tools are there, what kind of hardware tools, software tools, or how to go around. And then finally, we go for a demo, followed with questions and answers and some references, where if you are more interested on how to develop that, you can go through that. So, okay, so coming back, what is basically an edge? So edge typically refers to an electronic device, which has sensing capabilities because of sensors, and then which has computing capabilities because of microcontrollers inside that, and which has got connectivity capabilities like either Wi-Fi or cellular network or any kind of low power wide area networks like LoRa or Zigbee or NB-IoT. So that's what basically compare an edge refers to. So it's nothing but like in front of me, as I showed. Are you also able to see myself, right? Whatever I saw over here.
Yeah.
So over here, like as I'm showing, this is a kind of a device which is sensing what kind of gases, harmful gases are there. And these are also kind of device. If you go inside the device, you'll find something like this, which has a processor, which has some switches, okay? And we write the software to go inside this, and it has got some connectivity platform. Also, it has got Wi-Fi connectivity inside itself. It has got Zigbee connectivity. So this basically typically refers to what an edge is. Okay, and in common day life, if you see, if the Fitbit bands which we have, the wireless AirPods or the wireless headsets that we have, the watch which I'm wearing, these are all typical examples of embedded device, edge devices. It's nothing but it's an electronic device with memory, computing capability, and connective capability. So technically, we call them as embedded devices. And that's what I wrote over here. What are the typical examples of edge devices? Now, we know what is edge, and now we know what is AI. Now we will come to know what is AI at the edge. What does that basically mean when we combine both these words? So in the right-hand side of this presentation, you can see what is the usual AI paradigm, which is still now followed and will be also followed, is basically we have a raw sensor data. For example, I'm waving my hand or my heartbeat is there, okay? And whether this heartbeat is a normal heartbeat or it's abnormal heartbeat. So basically any data which is collected by the sensor is, and that data is basically sent to the cloud. But before sending to the cloud, a basic level of signal processing is done so that noisy data is waved out and only data which is interesting enough is sent. Where it is sent? It is sent to the cloud server. And the cloud server, there are a lot of examples of cloud server where the training is done. Like Google has its typical Keras TensorFlow cloud server. Amazon has its AWS server. Microsoft has its, Microsoft also has its own edge server. And so there are many cloud servers available, and typically in the cloud server, which are really powerful enough, and they have a lot of computing capabilities. So usually the training happens over there. And in training, what do you mean by training? Is that, let's say a particular data goes, a label is attached to it, telling that, okay, this data means this, and then after training, the modeling is also going on, and after the modeling, the inferencing. So usually in AI, we have 3 steps. The first step is training, the second step is modeling, and the third step is inferencing. But what I wanted to say is that in the traditional AI approach, all these 3 steps, that is training, modeling, and inferencing, everything is done in the cloud. So that's why it's very much essential that this box which is shown is basically an edge device, and that data has to go into the server. Otherwise,
hi Sritam, sorry to interrupt you. Can you use pointers like we are?
Pointers over here. I'm not much used to it, dude. Okay, maybe I'll highlight on it if that is okay for you.
Yeah, I was wondering, Sritam, if you're switching the slides, because we're still seeing the cover slides. So just to confirm that.
You're seeing this one, is it?
We're seeing still the title slide.
Yeah, the title, the first slide. Yeah.
All right, next one. Resume slide slow. Okay, now.
You can keep it in normal PPT mode and you can share it if you are facing any difficulty there.
Resume slide slow. Slide slow.
Also, if you prefer, you can send me the slides and I can share the.
Yeah, I think that will be best. I mean, it will save everyone's time. Let me do that right away. Sorry guys for this thing. What's the email address that alumni@EIT?
I sent you the email address on the chat.
Okay.
Hi Shritam, you can stop sharing right now and you can again reshare it, your current screen. In that way, whenever you change the slide, it will be visible, I guess.
No,
yeah, that's true. Sometimes the screen freezes and you need to stop sharing and share again.
Yeah, you need to do that.
Basically, my laptop, I don't know, my office, something has happened. It's not behaving properly. Just give me 1 minute, guys. I know it's a bit frustrating. Stop sharing. Okay. And okay, this is the email ID. Okay, Control C. And then Control. Yeah, Jose, I just sent it to you.
All right, thanks. I will check the inbox.
Usually I don't use Zoom and we use Teams. So this is, I think, one of my first experiences over here.
Yeah, we can understand.
Thank you, Sumit. By the way, you stopped me. Otherwise, I was thinking like everybody is seeing the screens.
Yeah. It's okay.
I still have not received the presentation slide. So maybe until this gets into my inbox, you could try to share again the screen and see if the problem is fixed.
I just gave it right now. I also sent to Devar also. Let me just refresh a bit. Okay, but by the time it comes, I can show some demo. Okay, so that at least.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Because I still have not received the slides.
Okay. So now I think I have switched to my Linux system. Everybody can see this?
Yes.
Ah, that's great. So
yeah.
let's turn on. Okay. We are connected to the virtual machine. Okay. And I run my system right now. So basically this demo has 6 wake words. So I will try to speak something, and just remember the device which I am holding right now, it doesn't have any internet connection. Okay, so it's trying to recognize what I'm saying just locally. Okay, without, so this data is, I mean, I have done the training in the cloud, but this inferencing is done only over here. This has no connectivity to the internet. Okay, so now the 6 wake words over here, I just want to, just want to ensure once again, everyone is able to see my screen, what is getting displayed, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, great. So there are 6 wake words. One is called Hello Blanca, and second is Hello World, and the third is No, and the fourth is Yes, and the other 2 are basically noise and unknown. So unknown is like if I play music, it will be activated. And out of this, I have a readily open source data was available for trained data was available for yes and no. And for Hello World, I had to train it for 10 minutes around. And for my friend, I did this for Blanca. This is like Hello Blanca. I trained it for around close to 10 minutes. So Hello Blanca and Hello World, it will only recognize my voice because I have only trained for my voice. But for yes and no, a lot of people have used this. So I got it from the Edge Impulse. What is Edge Impulse? Edge Impulse is basically like AI at the edge service platform, development platform, where developers like me and any one of you can use that. And it's very easy and get easily quickly started, and it's completely open source. Still, it is only for development purpose. And when you suppose you have a startup idea, you can use the platform for developing your prototype and for proving your proof of concept. And when you want to commercialize it, they have commercial versions. So let's try something out. Okay, whenever the word recording will come, I will try to tell something. And over here, you can see numbers like 0.09, 0.06. These are all probabilities. The total probability is 1. Okay, so if you add all these numbers over here, it will sum up to 1. And over here, whatever I'm saying, let's say I will say yes. Okay, let me demonstrate it. I think that will make it more clear. Yes. See guys, over here, the probability of yes is 0.97. You can see over here, right? And the probability of others is very less. It means that it has inferred, it has great confidence that I'm telling yes. Okay, let's try for other things. Let's say, hello Blanca. Okay, recording. Okay, I'll wait for the next one. Hello Blanca. Yeah, see, it has a 61% confidence that I'm saying hello Blanca, and for others it is less. So basically you can write a if condition, whichever is the highest, that's what basically it is inferring. Okay, I will try for hello world. Okay. Hello world. It has 77%. Okay. No. See, no has 87%. Yes. Yes. 64%. Hello world. Hello Blanca. See, it has 62%. Hello. Okay, one second. Hello world.
What happens if you say something that is not in that list?
That's nice. Okay, so it will come in unknown. Okay, let's try. Okay, I will tell. Okay, hello Jose. See, mostly it comes in unknown. You can see over here. Okay, and let's say where is my mobile, and let's say if I play any music over here, it will also come in unknown, either unknown or noise.
How do you teach new terms to this AI? And I think also Julia wants to ask some question.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I wanted to ask how do these probabilities are calculated, or how are they?
Yeah, this probability. Yeah, that's a nice question. So the probability is that I have trained this model, and in the training of the model I have trained by giving voice sets. and I have labeled those voice. Like I repeatedly said, like, let's say hello Blanca for 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes of recording, I labeled it as it refers to hello Blanca. So like that, it has been trained for 4 things: hello Blanca, hello world, yes, and no. And now after training, after the training is done, the model which was generated, it's a neural network model. The neural network model parameters are set in such a way that it has 6 classes. So basically, in AI, either we can have regression models or we can have classification models, but this is a typical classification model, and it has 6 labels. Number 1 is hello Blanca, second is hello world, third is yes, fourth is no, fifth is unknown. It can be like I said hello Jose, and the 6th is noise. Let's say if there is some buzz or something, it can be noise. So basically, the model has been trained in such a way that it takes input, and based on the model which has been developed, it gives output. And the output is basically, it gives what is the probability that this wake word was called. You get my point?
Yeah. I was just not sure if these were the only ones in the training data, or how.
Yeah,
why they sum up to 1. That was what I did not get in the first part, but now I understand. Thanks.
Yeah. So basically, the classification works in such a way that always the output of the model will be 1, and it will be distributed among all the labels. So the label which has the highest number is basically the output, final output. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just the class names, and I don't know, didn't realize that these were different classes. Let's say
different classes. And I have defined these classes. So this device over here in my hand cannot understand anything apart from this 4. If it listens, for example, I'll tell your name, like, okay, hello Julia. See, it doesn't understand, and mostly feels like it's either unknown. Okay, let me try again. Hello Julia. See, majorly it is unknown. Okay, but if I
Sritam, I have one. Yeah, go ahead.
We have a question from Amit. How many iterative loops does the AI neural model execute to recognize any voice and infer, or the complexity of your algorithm?
Yeah, the complexity, I mean, the depth of the algorithm is 5 layers, and that one was default, which I did it. So it has, out of those 5 layers, 1 is the input layer, and the final is the classification layer, which is output layer, which has 6 outputs for the 6 labels. And in between, there are 3. So in total, three hidden layers, basically, which we call, because the output and input are not hidden, but the 3 in between are hidden layers. So in total, there was 5. So if you go to this Edge Impulse platform, you will clearly, because in the references of the slide, I have given a reference to where I have learned this tutorial. So they have that Edge Impulse is a very nice platform where you can define all these things. What kind of neural network you want, what kind of depth do you want, and while training, how many epochs do you want to train? For example, I did it for 500 epochs. Okay, so the more epoch, I mean, you have to see, sometimes more epochs gives you better results, and sometimes more epochs gives you bad results because you overshoot from your optimum result. So that you can
just let me know to which one should I go.
Yeah. So second one, next. Okay, I'll just tell you next, Jose. Okay, next. Yeah, so I explained, guys, what is an edge. Edge is nothing but an IoT device which is having some computing power, some sensing power, and connectivity power. And we call them embedded devices. And right in front of me, I have so many embedded devices over here. And yeah, so that is basically called as an edge. A device is called as an edge. Why it's called as an edge? Because from that point onwards, the data goes to the cloud using any internet connectivity platforms, like, for example, Wi-Fi or Zigbee, or it might be Bluetooth, anything. So that's why they call it as the edge, because that's the point from which the data is out of the device and into the cloud. So, but what our approach right now is that we will not send it to the cloud, but we will do it over here. Okay, so we know edge. Next, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, and we know AI. So now if we combine both edge and AI, what does this edge AI mean? So as over here, you can see in the traditional AI in the right hand side, the box like signal processing and raw sensor data collection, that's basically a device, let's say. and the data, whatever it collects, it removes the noise, and the processed data, it gives it to the cloud for all kind of things. As I said, there are three things. One is training, another is modeling based, model development based on the training, and then inferencing. So in the traditional approach, all the things was happening in the cloud, and that's why all kind of issues are also coming that we will discuss next, and that has some relevance to what Cezara explained. So my point over here is that in the traditional approach, everything is done in the cloud, and nowadays people came with a new approach. Why to do everything in the cloud? Let's do only the training part in the cloud, because the training is the most intensive and intensive operation in this entire thing, and it requires a lot of raw data. Like for example, it cannot detect hello world or hello Blanca said by you guys, but it can understand mine because I have done it, right? So training and data collection, I would say, are the most challenging parts, and it requires a lot of training. So a lot of power is required, computation, as well as like power, normal electrical power. So that's why it's basically done in the cloud. But after the training is done, the model is developed, which is the baby, which is the final product, intelligent thing which can detect. That model is basically shifted, and it is basically stored in the edge device. Like for example, in the left-hand side, you can see in the box, you have all the three things happening locally. You have raw sensor data, and then the signal processing, and then the inferencing. Inferencing on the model, which was transferred, which was trained on the cloud, but transferred to the edge device, and inferencing is done locally on the edge device. So even if you have no internet connection like this, like in my device, we did not have any internet connection, but still it is able to predict what I'm trying to say. Okay, so that's what AI at the edge means. Okay.
So Sritam, one more question. What is the size of the model?
The size of the model, it took a code size of 35 kilobytes, and for RAM requirements, which is most essential, it's 18.5 kilobytes. And
suppose if you want to do a specific complex model, then we have to choose the right chipset also, like right board with proper storage and proper RAM also, right?
Yeah, mostly it is RAM actually. And also, of course, the storage, because going a bit more technical very soon. Much more concerned with the internal flash that you have. But if in the references, I will share the slide with you. If you go to this Edge Impulse platform, they are making these models for you, I mean, for the embedded devices that you select in the most way. That even have your model size within 30 kilobytes, and the RAM usage, peak RAM usage around 18 kilobytes, which is good enough for today's microcontrollers.
Okay. Yeah.
So next slide, please. Yeah. So why AI at the edge? Okay, why should we go for this? I mean, everything was working fine. Cloud is very powerful, very intensive in its operation, very quick also. Why should we go from the cloud to the edge device? And this is very much linked to whatever Cezara has said, that is right to privacy and right to personalized data. Okay, so the first thing, I would like to discuss the third point because it relates to the previous presentation. Privacy. Like for example, in Amazon Alexa, okay, we say, hello, hi Alexa, play my song. So basically the voice is going to the Amazon AWS where it is getting inferenced. So Amazon can know what I'm trying to say, can understand what kind of music I like. Amazon can also understand what kind of music at what time I like. So basically they can understand me because they have the data. So that's the problem if everything goes to the cloud. Okay, so you cannot, I mean, of course, there are GDPR rules, but you cannot always guarantee that your data is completely secure and personalized. And that is what this device, this new paradigm approach does. It never sends the data, what you are doing of the sensors to the cloud. It only keeps it within itself and then decides of its own what to do with it. And that's why you have the privacy and the security. And most importantly, the privacy. Okay, and of course, security, because if there is any security flaw, the data is going to the cloud, you don't have any control. And if there is flaw in the cloud, then your data is lost. For example, recently, the website of TU Berlin was hacked basically. Okay, so in this way, if there is security flaw in the cloud, then your privacy is gone. But if you go for this approach, you're 100% sure that whatever you are saying is decided locally. And once it is decided, the data is lost. Okay, so there's no question of any loss of privacy and security. So that's the biggest advantage. The second and the first point says that reduce latency. But of course, because whenever I say, hi, Alexa, the voice goes through the internet connection to the AWS server, gets inferenced over there and comes back. So let's say if the internet connectivity is not good, then it can hamper the time it takes to decide whatever you have said. Okay, so that's ready, because now I tell it, it happens over here and it gives me the output. So it's definitely more faster. And increased reliability, of course, because even if internet connection is not there, you will be able to do, and safety. Power and cost. The second point says that, okay, always if the inferencing is done in the cloud, in the traditional AI approach, you need to have an internet connection. Your device will consume more power because it will use wireless connectivity options like Bluetooth or Zigbee, or maybe cellular connectivity. So definitely it will take a lot of power. And cost. Why cost? Because if you use any cellular connectivity or internet connectivity like Wi-Fi, you have to pay for that. Okay, so let's say I have 100,000 sensors and all are having connectivity. So I have to pay money for all the 1,000 sensors, right? Or all the 100,000 sensors. But because I'm using the cloud services. So in that way, it's more costly also, the traditional AI approach. But if you just collect the data at the edge and decide it at the edge, you don't have to. Okay, and reduce bandwidth requirement. And okay, next. Yeah, typical use cases is, I will just go in one thing because we are running out of time. One is predictive maintenance. For example, if you have a vibration sensor in one of your machines, and that vibration sensor is able to tell you that this machine is going out of order. Let's say because the way the motor will rotate and the vibrations generated when the device is fresh, and let's say after 3 years, the same device, the motor is rotating, but it will have a different vibration pattern. By that, you can, so if your sensor can collect all those data and locally it can decide, no, it's time for maintenance, it can directly give output, only the final output to the serviceman, that now it's time for some maintenance activity, please do it. So in that way, what will happen is that the machine will always be in good health because you're giving service whenever it requires. So, and there are so many other cases, and one small case is this video inferencing, because there are so many GDPR rules that no, you cannot have a camera because you are taking the pictures. Okay, so nowadays companies are coming with cameras in which they detect how many humans are there locally. So, and by that they become GDPR compliant because they are not sending any video data to the cloud. Yeah, so that's also another typical use case which companies are using. Okay, next please. Okay, and this is much more a bit technical, like how it's done. So as I said, like how I have done this using Edge Impulse, which is covering all the 3 parts. So the ecosystem is divided in 3. In the top layer, it is all the standard frameworks. Like I am mostly used TensorFlow, and there are other ones, TensorFlow Lite basically, because it's for microcontrollers. And then once I do the training and the modeling over there, I use a wrapper layer or the middleware layer, which we call, and then that transforms my model, TensorFlow model, into a device understandable executable. So next, please. Yeah, it's time for demo, which is already over. And yeah, I just open it for question and answers.
Thank you very much, Sritam, for this very hands-on practical presentation. So we had the chance to see actually some real tangible applications of this AI at the edge. So we have not so much time for questions, but maybe we could take 1 or 2 more if anyone in the audience would like to ask Sritam something else about this topic.
No more questions?
Yeah, maybe
Julia, yes, please go ahead.
So, I mean, I'm not really much an expert on Edge AI, but I always have the impression that it would limit my choice of algorithm, and also would need somehow specialized hardware to do this. Is this right? Or
yeah, you're right. Yeah, actually, Julia, this is a very nice question, because we should not have a misconception that AI at the edge will completely take away the normal approach. No, it's basically, if you ask me the question, Sritam, this is my problem, whether I should go for Edge AI or I should go for a normal AI, the answer is, it depends on the use case. Because if my sensor data only has to say whether this motor is vibrating correctly or not correctly, then I would say it's better to go for Edge AI. Because because it's like, for example, I want to go from one place in Berlin to another place in Berlin. I do not need an aeroplane or a flight. I can go by cycle. But if I want to go from Berlin to Amsterdam, I will catch a flight. Okay, so in that way. So when the action, when the intelligence action of the machine is very simple, then it's better to go for a constrained device. And because the model will be very small and the requirement of the hardware will be very small, so it makes sense to go for edge AI. But let's say we go for real-time video analysis, okay, and where a real high computing platform is required and the model size is very big, then it might not be feasible to go for an edge device also. So then it makes sense to completely go for the training and modeling and inferencing in the cloud. So the answer is that edge AI is not replacing completely the traditional approach. Basically, I would say it's complementing, and which one you should take, it really depends on the use case requirement, the memory requirement which you have, and whether you have a suitable hardware for that or not. And if you don't have, then the only option is going for the traditional cloud approach. So it's been a wrong assumption that AI at the edge has completely replaced the normal approach. No, it's basically complementing it. Okay, I see. And is training on the edge device possible? Or training on the, yeah, this is a very nice question. Training on the edge device is possible. There is a French company, I forgot its name, which is doing training on the edge device. But I have never tried that, and I always do it on the cloud because it's very flexible and it's more powerful. And also there is so much open source data available for various kind of wake words and everything, in which I do the training in the cloud. But the answer is training in the device is possible. I have never tried out. Yeah, the name of the company is called Cartesiam. Okay, I write it in the chart, and that is doing Cartesiam. It's a French company, and that is trying out ways of doing training in the edge device itself. So it's possible, but I have not tried out. In this demo, the training and the model formation was done in the cloud using the Edge Impulse developer service. And then I flashed that model into the device, and the inference is only done on the device. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Because this, I think, is very important for the privacy point. Yeah. Because if nobody sends data to, let's say, a central repository or organization or whatever, then there will be no data to train on. Yeah, and that's why new cameras are also coming, which are counting people on the edge, and they are becoming GDPR compliant because of that. Yeah. I heard of some company doing that in Innsbruck. Thank you, Julia. Nice question.
All right, so I think we have run out of time for more questions, but again, thanks Sritam for this interesting demonstration, and actually to both of our speakers today, Cezara and Sritam, thanks a lot for being today a part of this last Tuesday after work of the session, but keep tuned because we will have more events, hopefully more physical events in the upcoming weeks and months. And this is officially also the last Tuesday after work of the current alumni board, because as you know, we have a change of teams on the 4th of July. So I will also use this opportunity to thank everyone and say farewell on behalf of the current board, and also welcome all the new board members, which I'm sure will do a great job in continuing the growth of our alumni community. So
one more last question. Like, can you share like both the slide decks, like Paltas, Sritam's and Cezara's?
All right. Yeah. So we will, if both of our speakers are okay, that we share the slides, we would post them to the alumni website. So is it okay for Cezara and Sritam if we share the slides?
Yeah. For me, it's okay.
Okay. Yeah. And Cezara says in the chat also, yes, sure. So thanks. We will share the slides on the alumni website and share the link on social media as well, with a recording of the session. So this session can also be found on our YouTube channel. And now I can just thank everyone and wish you a nice evening and nice rest of the week.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.